I just want to get started with how does it feel for you to be free right now?
Mixed emotions. I'm happy to be outside, obviously, in being free, not in federal prison or in a detention center. I'm still a little bit scared and anxious because I'm adjusting slowly but surely to being back out in the real world. And obviously, once you've had such a traumatic experience, it kind of comes with, I would say, some sort of postpartum, scares and stuff like that. So I'm still very like shook. It's the best word. I feel shook at sometimes, especially when I see like a law enforcement vehicle pulling up or something like that. It still gives me the creeps and makes me feel uncomfortable.
Fabian, you were released last Thursday. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was released Thursday right around 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., between 6 and 7 from the Burlington Mass ICE detention or intake area.
And I guess after so many weeks of being detained, I mean, I think a lot of us saw your fiance's videos on Facebook, just sort of updating the world about your circumstances, her communication with you. Like,
Yeah.
what was that day like for you? Like from sort of from the beginning, Thursday.
Okay. So that day on Thursday, I was obviously still in the Donald Wyatt detention facility. I had woken up in the morning and I was told I had court. And in prison, you need to put on your jail outfit or prison outfit, basically your striped clothes to be able to go to court. So I put my stuff on and I waited in this long line to go to court. And I was then informed that I was going to be in the second group. And I waited patiently, and they give you a tablet in jail, like an Android tablet that you can use for phone calls and text messaging. And I looked at my tablet, and I received a message from my fiance, and I looked, and it said, "Baby, you won. You're going to be free." And I had not even gone to court yet, so I'm like, "Oh my goodness, am I hallucinating? Is there something wrong?" So then one of the correctional officers comes up to me and says, "No, your court case has been shifted. You don't have court anymore." He didn't have an answer what happened. He just said, "You don't have court anymore." So I went to one of the silver telephones and I called my fiance, and she couldn't even talk. It was really hard to understand what she was saying. She's like, baby, you won. You won." I was like, "Can you loop in Mr. Keller, please?" So that way I could talk to my attorney, David Keller. And it turns out that David goes, "Dude, within 2 minutes, your case was dismissed. We're working hard on getting you out of the building. I think you have a good chance at being free today." And then that phone call ended. And at about 4 o'clock, which is 3.5 hours after this phone call, I was taken down to the detention release and booking area where two ICE agents were waiting for me, and they put me in handcuffs and feet shackles and put a chain around my waist and transported me somewhere else. So at this moment in time, I mean, whether someone tells you you're going to be free or not, it was really hard to believe I was going to be free because again, I'm in shackles and I'm being transported somewhere in a black van, and I had no idea where I was going. But they took me to Burlington, Mass, and to the ICE facility. And then when I got there, they started the procedures of release. And I remember multiple people that worked there were like, "Oh my God, that's the famous guy. That's Fabian Schmidt." And they asked me questions. They were actually quite nice people there. And they released me from my handcuffs and my shackles and gave me my luggage. And I was introduced to a couple people. And then they let me out the front door where Bhavani was waiting. And as soon as she ran into my arms, I was just ecstatic because I finally got to hug her. And man, it was a big moment to breathe fresh air and to have your partner back. And very slowly, I then realized that I wasn't in prison anymore. And I got into the car and we drove home.
So, Fabian, your mother, she was the one who first raised your case to us, and she had sort of described like you've been here in the United States since 2007. You have a long history here in New England. I mean, what was your life like just before the detention at Logan Airport? Like, you were a New Hampshire father, right?
Yeah. So Well, yeah, I have a daughter. She makes my life a lot better, that's for sure. So I have my daughter, and then I am an electrical project lead at work. I work for two fantastic companies that are in the same universe, sisters to each other, and I get to work with a talented team of engineers and technicians that I get to lead into the world of manufacturing every day. So I have a really good job and a great company. Also in love with my fiance, and I have a dog. So I have a pretty regular life. I work a lot, and when I don't work, I try to help out in the community. I work with people out of sober living. I try to help them get rehoused and find jobs just because I know there's a big need for community support here. So I try to be as involved as I can. I have a great group of friends, and it's just my life was pretty blissful, actually. I mean, I never saw that coming, so I took a lot of that stuff for granted. So I would say my life was amazing. I mean, definitely now I would say that because coming out of having been detained, looking back at it, I'm a very blessed man, to be honest with you. So
Fabian, that was going to be my next question. Like the day you were coming back from Europe, uh, you were detained at Logan Airport. What happened that day? Like, were you getting off the plane and it happened immediately?
So on that day, I came back from a 7 day vacation. I had to go see my dad. It was imperative to see some family members, and came back with my legal green card that I had just obtained again. Like this is my third green card. I've been here so long. You know, you renew them temporarily and periodically. Excuse me. And I had a brand new green card and a brand new German passport. And I walked through customs and I showed my documentations. I didn't think there was going to be any issues. And at that moment, they told me I had to go to secondary security checkpoint, and I was walked to a holding room, a detention, or not detention, but more of an interrogation room. It has room for like 200 people. And as soon as I stepped foot in there, I started getting violently interrogated, verbally abused, and like this, that, you have this on your record. I have a minor misdemeanor in 2016 that was already, in my opinion, that was already closed, and it was a such a lightweight charge, you know. And then I had a DUI as well, and I had gone to court for him. That was settled, you know. I never thought that something like that would keep me from being able to enter the United States. So the guys that were interrogating me didn't even tell me why they were stopping me there. So after about 20 minutes of interrogation, they were like, all right, you need to see the supervisor. You need to go see the supervisor. So they took me into this room where they strip searched me and looked through my luggage and then took my smartwatch off my wrist. And then they asked them if I could have a phone call because it obviously seemed like I was being detained. And they said, no, you can't contact anybody. I was like, what about a legal team? And they said, no. I was like, can you guys call my embassy to tell me, like, I need to know what's going on? They said you can't have any of that, and they placed me in one of the chairs to wait. And you know, that's that's kind of like when I realized that my life wasn't going to be the same because I had never been talked to in such an aggressive manner about, you know, the interrogations were pretty like to the point and uh, horrendous. They were scary. It was scary to be put in the spotlight where they're asking you, how much money do you have in your bank account? What do you do for a living? Where do your parents live? What does your dad do for a living? What does your mom do for a living? And I tried telling them all the right information, which I don't have anything to hide in those aspects. But none of that was enough. And then they told me that they didn't even know why they had to hold me. They had to make calls to lawyers that were then going to make a decision on whether I was going to be released that night. One of the supervisors made the decision that I was inadmissible at the moment, and he told me the reason he's not letting me go is because I have a green card and I'm a flight risk. He told me I was a flight risk and that he was scared that I was going to enter through a southern border. And I tried reminding him that I was from Germany. I have a good pedigree, a good family. None of us would ever sneak into a border, nor do I need to sneak into a border. I'm a legal permanent resident that's lived here for 18 years. And I was shut down and I was held in this waiting room until about 1 a.m. in the morning. And then they rolled out this little tiny mattress, like a cot, and they let me sleep on that in this waiting room filled with people. There was probably like maybe 6 to 7 employees there. The lights were on, and I got to sleep until I don't know. I think I got like 3.5 hours of sleep, and then they woke me up folded the bed back, had me take a seat back in the chair. And they then, during the daytime, interrogated me some more, asked me many questions. They
But
fed. Hmm?
it was Saturday by this point. Like you flew in on
So,
Tuesday and then it was Saturday.
yeah, so this is Saturday. So then on Saturday, I woke, they woke me up, and I remember I started sweating profusely, and I started feeling really weak, and I didn't really know what was wrong with me. I thought it was just anxiety or something of the sort. And they fed me a cup of noodle, a lukewarm cup of noodle, and gave me a bottle of water. And then I ended up sitting in that chair for 18 hours, the same two chairs in this room, while many people passed in and out. And then they rolled out that little bed for me again, and I got another 3.5, 4 hours of sleep. And then the next day, same thing again. I was interrogated some more. I kept asking for contact with an attorney, a family member, with the embassy. I didn't even know they called my fiance outside. She sat there for 5.5 hours waiting for me in the parking lot, freaking out, crying, devastated, shocked. Did not know why I was there, how long I was going to be in there for. Neither did any of my family members. Uh, so that night went on, and I started feeling a lot weaker. I mean, now we're on Saturday night, and I had another cup of noodle that night, and they rolled that bed out again, and I got another 3.5, 4 hours of sleep. Got woken up again early in the morning, and now at this point, I'm feeling really physically ill. Like my chest was hurting, my stomach was going crazy. I didn't feel myself at all. I was just going down a slippery slope, and the border patrol agents kept on, talking to me, and some of them interrogated me some more, and basically I kept asking them for contact with my embassy. They wouldn't put me in contact with anybody. I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody at all, nor did they have a reason for holding me. So they couldn't tell me. They said the lawyers are working on it. That was the answer. And then quickly Sunday night approached, and then same procedure again. I sat in the same two chairs for 18 hours, and cup of noodle, and then bottle of water. And then I woke up in the morning, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I remember going to the bathroom, and I just collapsed, fainted in the bathroom, hit on the ground pretty hard. And then after I collapsed, I went over to one of the border patrol agents, and I told him I collapsed and I needed to go to the hospital. My chest was pounding, and I didn't know what was wrong with me because I sweated through my clothes. And he said, "Oh, you're just going to med out like everybody, huh?" That's the verbatim words. I was like, "Med out? I don't even know what that means exactly, but I need some medical attention, that's for sure." And then they ended up calling an ambulance. I was handcuffed to a gurney, and two of the officials took me over to Mass General Hospital, where I was treated and diagnosed with influenza and severe anxiety. And the influenza had kicked me a pretty decent sized fever, so I was sweating profusely because of the fever and obviously all the symptoms that come along with that. After about a 4 hour stay at Mass General, in a very, very private assessment of what was wrong with me, the officers were watching that the whole time. Even though the doctors asked multiple times for them to leave and to give me my privacy, they said their supervisor demanded that they stood right there and watched me go through this procedure, right? And they said that they needed to watch my fever, monitor my fever, and give me medication to make sure they could control the flu symptoms, so that way I wouldn't be in pain. And I needed a lot of rest and a quiet area to recuperate. They took me back into that same room that I was just talking about earlier. I was put back in the same two chairs. Um, Another grueling 18 hours went by. They rolled out the same little bed, and in the morning, one of the supervisors came and grabbed me and told me that there was a chance that I could get a temporary green card and I would be released, and then I could come back on June 2nd to face a court, a judge. And after about 2 hours of this gentleman and I working on the temporary paperwork, the supervisor came in and said, "You're not effing going home. You're staying here. You're going to go somewhere where there's lots of immigrants, a hospital, and a gym." That's what he told me. I was then put in a secluded cell that was upstairs. They handcuffed me, basically walked me through the airport to some door where I went upstairs into this little tiny holding cell that was extremely dirty. There was feces in the toilet, urine everywhere, a little tiny bed. And when I got in there, I just started pounding on the door. I just would not stop pounding on the door. And I said, "Call the embassy." show me that you're calling my embassy, because I knew my rights. I knew that they had to call the embassy. They can't just hold me without contacting the embassy because I'm on an international border at Boston Logan Airport. You're not even really in the United States until you leave the international border.
Fabian, how long were you at Mass General Hospital for?
About 6 hours.
Just 6 hours?
Yeah, they took me away right away. They didn't want to. They said that I don't know what the exact words because they talked to them confidentially, but they were pretty adamant of getting me out of there. Plus, I'm in an emergency room at Mass General, and they don't unless you're like bleeding out or have some kind of an actual real life threatening critical condition, they're not going to occupy a bed there. And they didn't know where I was being held. They had no idea.
Were you given any medications for
Yes.
your IV fluid to help with the dehydration?
No IV fluids were put in me because I was able to consume water, and when I was there, I drank plenty of water. So they gave me all the water I could drink and a sandwich, and they gave me food, and I knew that it was crucial for me to take those things in. So I got medication for one for the anxiety, two for a little bit of the flu symptoms, but the fever was kicking, so they reduced my fever in there, which made me feel better. And yeah.
So you went back to the airport and then you were transferred to the Wyatt.
Yeah, in the morning time of Tuesday, I was put in that holding cell I was telling you about. When I kept pounding on the door, they said, "Don't worry, we're going to transfer you." Then they put me in hand and feet shackles and threw me in the back of a white Border Patrol cruiser car. And consistently, they just made some inappropriate jokes about me and were just, in general, very prejudiced. I couldn't even believe that I was being talked to like that. I didn't know where we're going, but this it turns out now I know where we went. We were on our way to Rhode Island to the Donald Wyatt detention facility. And
The men who were making fun of you, what type of jokes did they make without going into great detail? Like, can you
oh,
talk more about it?
why didn't you become a citizen? Don't you like this country? And I was like, I love this country. So just things like that egging me on for why I wasn't a citizen yet. And oh, what's your wife think about all this? Or do you have a dog at home? I bet he misses you. Um, Made a stupid joke about driving with holding Dunkin' Donuts in one hand. I hope I don't crash with this Dunkin' Donuts in my hand. Just immature, childish, facetious comments that shouldn't have been something that you tell somebody that was in the predicament I'm in. And I also got made fun of for meting out and doing what every immigrant does that's scared. Um, so that right there was for me, it was just like, it was degrading, it was dehumanizing, it was horrendous. People should not be treated like that, especially when they're in distress. And I realized when I went to the Donald Wyatt detention facility, when I got there, I got, you arrive at prison, which is shocking for someone like myself that's never been to a level 3 prison. It's not like it's any prison, it's a level 3, which is like maximum security. So you can just tell that they have a different agenda there. They keep high profile criminals have done some heinous acts against humanity inside of these prisons. And they made me strip down again, gave me jail clothes, put me in an elevator, took me upstairs to the level 4 yard, which they used to keep ICE detainees. But mind you, every single person in there has committed like a felony or some large drug violation, some way, way more crazy stuff than I I ever did in my life. So when I got there, it was loud, it was bright, people were yelling at me. I got put in a cell with another guy that was a murderer and Brazilian guy. But I will say that the COs at Donald Wyatt, it's a different environment than Border Patrol. They don't make fun of you. They don't like poke at you. They're just doing their job. You can tell they're more professional for sure, at least less prejudiced. Um, I wouldn't say I felt safe, but I could tell that the abuse with the food and the verbal lashings was going to stop. I knew that I was finally going to be getting at least 2% humanity in there because the guys weren't like attacking me per se. And I remember being really scared when I walked in there because there were so many people. and I could tell that it was a wild place. I mean, the first day I was there, a fight broke out, and we were locked into our cells for 29 hours without being able to leave the cell. So me and the new acquaintance I had just made were locked in close. Mind you, I still had the flu, so he got to see not the pretty side of me for the first 24 hours.
And at what point were you able to make contact with family, your fiance, or an attorney?
As soon as I got to the prison, they gave me a phone call. And that phone call, I used to call my mother. And then within 12 hours, I got a tablet that let me, gave me the permission to call Bhavani, my fiance. And she then worked a couple days on providing me with the best attorney she could find, which is David Keller. And then he became part of my life after 2 days in the detention facility.
What was communication like with Mavani and David? Were you able to access calls or emails pretty easily?
I didn't get no emails ever, but I did get calls from 8 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. at night. You can call your attorney on a non-recorded line, and you can talk to your spouse that's verified on the phone as much as you can afford. It's very expensive to call, so you can call as much as you want, and your tablet has to be charged. So when you're in lockup, like we were, when they lock you into your cell, because when other people fight, you get locked in. So then you can't charge your tablet. So when your tablet dies, you can't call anybody because you don't have access to a phone.
And otherwise, what was it like living in an ICE facility for you?
It was dehumanizing and scary. So my second day that I was there, the ICE agent pulls me out of my cell. At this point, congressmen and senators have reached out to the facility and the ICE agents, so they put political pressure, which I cannot thank them enough for, because immediately I was getting some attention in the sense of they were trying actively to make sure that I was treated okay, right? So, mind you, I'm still in this level 3 prison, so you're on your own. You have to be your own man in there. You can't just. There's no such thing as protection in a level 3 prison. Uh, the guy literally called me into his little office and said that I was in there with the most horrendous crimes. And I asked him, like, murder? And he's like, no, worse than that. And I was like, rape? And he's like, nah, even worse than that. And I was like, child rape? He's like, yep, there's a guy in here that raped an 8-year-old child. That's why he basically told me, watch your P's and Q's. You're in here with the worst of the worst. And that, when I heard that, scared me. And I realized after seeing many fights and hearing conversations that this is not just going to be easy to be in here. So
Understanding about why you were detained.
I didn't have one. I had no idea. I knew that in 2016 I had gotten into some misdemeanor trouble, which was irrelevant because it was already settled, I thought. And it didn't come with any immigration consequences. I was never informed of immigration consequences, even though I had an attorney. So after 24 days, then they finally said they were charging me with a controlled substance charge in 2016. But that controlled substance charge was from a collegiate party that I attended, and it was a substance that was thrown on the ground, and they arrested me on the front yard of someone's property for being drunk in public, even though I was in a yard. So that case, one, the substance was never tested. B, the substance was not mine. C, the charges dismissed in a court of law, so it was not even something they could use anyways. It was a dismissed case. And
He asked repeatedly of ICE, and then eventually Border Patrol commented publicly on it. So we went back and they said when an individual is found with drug-related charges and tries to re-enter the country, officers will take proper action. What are your thoughts on hearing that statement?
I think that they're doing their best job not on being transparent, right? So obviously proper action to withhold somebody like myself, that I think that they are just trying to cover themselves up a little bit. I think that they need to admit to the faults that they made in this process. I think you cannot fix the system that is broken with continuous lying to the public. It was obviously not the proper way to treat somebody. My fiance that was sitting out in the parking lot for 5 hours that didn't know what was going on. The fact that they didn't contact my embassy, which they by law have to do. The fact that they didn't let me talk to a legal representative and the fact that I wasn't given proper meals. I don't think that any criminal in the United States gets treated like that, no matter what charges they have.
And your mother, when she first spoke with us, described some more sensitive things, as you mentioned being stripped. She mentioned you being stripped and being placed in a shower. Can you talk a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah, so they were basically forced me to take a shower because they have to give you a shower, right? So after the third day, I told them I can't shower because I'm running a fever and I don't have a towel or anything to dry up with. So if you guys put me in there, I'm going to come out freezing. My fever's going to kick way harder. They didn't care. Two men brought me to this back room, made me strip down naked, and tossed me into this freezing cold shower, and then gave me a camping towel that's wrapped up in like a plastic wrapper. You couldn't dry an infant with a towel like that. So I ended up getting out of that shower freezing cold, putting on the same clothes I had, and then getting put back in that chair. And I just shook my way through it. I was shaking the whole time, but I couldn't do anything. I mean, those guys are strong people with firearms, and intimidation factor is huge, right? So it's hard to kind of get your way. I asked for a warmer shower. They said it's not possible. The water doesn't warm up on your behalf.
Aware that you were ill at this point, that you had the flu and had been hospitalized?
You would have really had to be blind to see that I didn't have the flu. I was completely sweating. I was constantly ill. And I mean, were they made aware that I had the flu? I don't think there was a medical professional that diagnosed me with the flu at this time. That was after, but I had told them many times over how I was feeling. So
When you were at Mass General Hospital, did any doctors or nurses try to mention that you shouldn't be detained or seek to reach out to Bhavani or someone else for you?
um, the Border Patrol officers did not allow them to really speak to me like that. They cut them off immediately when they were trying to say things like that. The nurse was the only one that was like, "This," she said, "that this is messed up." That's not the exact words she used, but she looked at me and she said, "This is so messed up." And luckily, my partner, she had, she taught me some things about the medical field, and I knew which questions to ask, so that way it made it seem like they knew that I was in some kind of a bad situation, but they were constantly trying to give medications to me to take back to the place we were going, and they were like, "No, we can't pick up any medications for him. Um, we can't stop at CVS. This is not like that." And the nurse was like, "Well, he really needs medication," and they were like, "No, that's not how this works." And I mean, I could tell they tried.
So going back to when you were in Wyatt for so long, what was going through your head? Did you think you were ever going to get out? Were there any moments where you thought you might be deported?
Oh yeah, I thought that until Thursday. I mean, this system is so broken. It's, all I saw was people getting deported. I didn't see one person leave. I was the first guy to be actually leaving from that facility in the 60 days I was in there. And the ICE officers constantly scare you, saying, "Hey, this is no, this new administration is pushing heavily against drug substance abuse and blah blah blah." I was telling them, I don't. That's not wasn't my substance. You guys are blaming me like this is an allegation. This is not a fact. This is not what happened. And now I bet you they're looking at this case and it's a dismissed case. So I'm basically like, I was perplexed, but I was also scared. The system is so strong and so violent. I was like, to the very last moment, thinking that I was going to be deported, and we made the proper things. But I will tell you, I had the best legal team in California. I had Susan Hearn and Brendan Blake, who I've worked with previously, and they were so on top of it, and they knew exactly what to do to be able to show that the process was not done right. And then I had David Keller over here. So having those great attorneys gave me hope. And literally, if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. But Also, my fiance, she did not stop working. She contacted congressmen, senators, and people that like governors, and they all reached out. And it's just so nice to feel that support from, mayors and governors. And then you're starting to feel like, yeah, man, this is wrong, but you're powerless. When you're in this situation, I did not think that I was going to set foot on this ground until I actually walked out of the ICE office because they mess you up mentally so bad. They scare you.
Did you receive any letters when you were in Wyatt? And did you hear from your consulate's office? And what was
Yes, yes. Letters I've received electronically. I've received one letter that, my fiance just takes a picture of it and sends it to me via message. And it takes a couple of days to get approved. And she gave those to me. But Wyatt didn't hand me any letters, even though multiple people started writing them. I received many letters from my employers, people in my life, a couple sergeant on the police force here in Nashua. Um, People were just sticking up for me all over the place, writing recommendation letters, sending them to my attorney as a to vouch for my character, and I was overwhelmed hearing and read. I was Those letters were read to me over the phone, and a lot of times I was crying because I couldn't believe the support I was receiving, and I mean it's actually in a gloomy situation like that. It was very very. It was heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time.
Fabian, what comes next for you? David had mentioned that you are pursuing legal remedies for what you encountered at Logan Airport. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that?
My thoughts. Well, my thoughts is that they broke my iPad and stole my AirPods and a bottle of cologne. So that's like the minimal stuff. But I'm not trying to be facetious or a little bit condescending here. I think that David Keller and the outstanding law team that I've put together, and I have many other attorneys that are now joining this case, are going to pursue this with an iron fist. And I think justice will be served in a due an amount of time. I mean, this is not something that's going to happen from one year to the next. This is a ongoing, long feat, and I think transparency will be the result. I think there will be some rules that are going to be put in place so people have to be more transparent because David Keller and his team and the team he has, they're not going to give up easy and they will push towards a result. So um, I'm hoping that I can make a difference. I'm hoping that I can be the last European legal immigrant with a green card that gets stopped and harassed like that for charges that are misdemeanors, right? I'm hoping that my legal team in California, Susan Hearn and Brendan Blake, that they can actually help more people in California because they figured out the California aspect of things, and they're all telling me it's like, hey, we're ready. If people need help, we will help them. So at least because I'm like kind of the breakthrough case, they now have some kind of strategy. Because what's most important is if no one ever told you about your immigration consequences when you go to court, you're not going to give it the same effort as if someone told you, hey, by the way, if you don't follow through exactly this way, you're going to be deported. You're going to lose everything, your family, your money, your credit, your house, everything will be gone. But I was never told that. So luckily, Susan Hearn, she's a really good attorney. So she went through this process with Brennan Blake, and they got the minute orders for the court records, and they found out that I was never advised of my immigration responsibilities. I was never advised in those two cases, period, about my immigration responsibilities. And that's where I was kind of perplexed because if I had known I had to show my face in the court of immigration, I would have done that way beforehand to make sure I wouldn't have these consequences. And so in reality, after some really good legal work, it's now a little bit more transparent for other people that potentially have to go through this process. So you're asking me what I'm going to do in my future is I'm going to help other people. I want to help more people whose families are outside right now crying for their loved ones that are legal permanent residents with just minor cases, preferably, you know, nothing crazy, but I want to help them because I saw how much my family suffered and I know how much it hurts. And I don't want other people to have to feel this pain because it's indescribable. It's like someone takes your heart out of your chest and losing your family and everything you ever built. It's the most painful thing that's ever happened to me. Even though it was temporary in my case, it very much felt like it was permanent.
With the Trump administration detaining so many different types of immigrants, immigrants who are legal permanent residents, people who have minor offenses, people who have significant offenses, people who are undocumented. How how do you feel you fit into all of this? Like you just experienced something extraordinary. What do you take from this moving forward?
Well, I will tell you this. I love this country and the people in it so much that this was a light blow, and I don't think this is anything big picture that I would comment on a political standpoint, but I will tell you this, the system is broken, and on a broken system, you can't fix anything. I think that there's a lot of people that are detained for no reason, but also some that are detained for a reason, because I got to see that with my own eyes. I think that we need to stand together strongly and ensure that we can fix this system and do proper legal work. Because at the end of the day, when you hold your hand on your chest and you say liberty and justice for all, it should mean something to all of us.